Okay, I haven't watched that many videos about Milton yet. I went to the spa for the last 4 hours. Before that, there was a few stuff, but I think it's they're 8 hours behind England, so I think most of the stuff that I saw was still in the dark. I think it will take a few hours before people get internet and manage to upload videos that they have and stuff. I'm more interested in what it looks like in the day than the night, because you can't really see what damage has been caused. So I haven't really figured out what much damage has been caused, but I have been thinking about things that can be done to help save stuff. Okay, so I've noticed one of the problems is a lot of cars are going to be destroyed by this. You're even people who are driving, you're driving and you see a puddle and you manage to drive through it, and then you drive through another puddle and you drive through another puddle, and eventually these puddles just get deeper and deeper, and then you find yourself trapped in between two puddles and you can't do anything. Your car is stuck because there's water on the front and it's on in front of you, water in the back behind you, and because it's just constantly rising, your engine gets flooded, and there's loads and loads of these cars. So one thing you can do to try and stop that from happening is, why not come up with a giant body bag for a car. So the idea is that if you come across a spot and you realize that you're trapped and you've got water in the front of you, water in the back of you, all you do is you get open this big giant black bag that's thick plastic and the size of your car, and then you put it underneath and you basically drive into the bag, and then you seal it up at the back. That's like completely waterproof, and then your car turns into a boat. Do you think someone can design that? I think that would be a very good idea, because then even though you might not, I mean, the car might float about, it will float about, but yeah, if you can float it into some sort of car park, or perhaps there could even be something on the body bag that has like some rope where you can tie it to a tree. So you find a big tree, or not a big tree because it might fall over, but you find a tree that looks strong and you anchor it to something that's like a pole or something that looks like it's not going to move. So basically it's a way of turning your car into a boat by driving it into, you just open up, so you'll need two people. You need one person to hold the bag open, and then another to kind of drive it into the bag, and then you seal it up at the back. Can you experiment with having these emergency evacuations for a car? So even if you have like two cars, if you have two cars and you've only got one driver, or one driver and someone who can like help. I mean, I guess getting both the cars out might be your best option, but yes, I've noticed that a lot of these cars could not make it out for various reasons. Maybe you have two cars and you only have limited time to get out, and you don't have time to come back and get the other one, or only one of you drives, or I don't know what the circumstances would be, but I think that would be a very good thing to invest in, a way of turning your car into some sort of float that, or it might not even float, even if it sinks, it doesn't matter, as long as water doesn't get through into this bit body bag. So it's just like a big, you get them for like wind stuff, like stuff to put over your car so that it doesn't, so that poo doesn't get on it or something. I don't know what you, there's ways of doing that, and so that's one idea. Another idea would be to have like Teletubbies. They have like the Teletubby land has like a round hill basically, and the house is inside the hill. Well, why don't you have like it needs to be above, way above sea level. So find the highest point. I think a lot of Florida is flat, so there aren't that many hills. But that's the point of the Teletubby hill. You kind of make a hill, you build a hill using rubble or whatever to build a hill, and then you have some sort of like a bomb shelter, only it would be designed more for hurricanes. The whole point of it would be, when a hurricane hits, has very, very strong wind, and it kind of it can knock walls over and stuff. But if you've designed some sort of shelter to look more like a hill, then the wind's just going to blow up the hill and over, and you'll be safe inside. But yeah, it does need to be elevated from the ground to prevent water from getting in. And you can also have one for cars as well. If you have like some emergency car park that's kind of designed to look like a hill, only I don't know if there are any hills in Florida, but when you've got a massive actuation like this, so many people are leaving that you can't. I think they said in the Hurricane Ian, there was like 120 deaths, and 100 of those were people trying to flee and getting stuck on the roads, and then having, I don't know, the wind just blow the car over, and a lot of deaths happen because people are in cars and trying to get off block roads. I think if it's a real emergency, you should even open up the other side of the road so that both entrances are going in the same direction, and then you just have like maybe this one. If no cars are using one side of the road, then just turn like the emergency road into the road that comes inwards, and then use all the other lanes to go. But you would need police officers to organise that. But that's one idea. But yeah, I like the idea of the sort of having the Teletubby shelters. People want to believe that there's that that if something like this happens, there is a place that you can go to get away from this. And yeah, if you can turn your car into a boat by just putting it in a body bag and then anchoring it to something, a body bag car bag for hurricanes is it providing water doesn't get into the bag, and providing it's not whacked by like wood or something. I know that's not, a bag is not going to protect it from flying wood, but if a window breaks? If a window breaks, you can always if some wood does fly into it and you get a smashed window or something, it's fine. But if the water, you can keep the water out, then it means you keep the engine okay. So when the water goes down, you just take it out the bag, and no water would have gotten in. So that is an idea that should be, and the Teletubby idea, and I don't know, you can build multi-story car parks somewhere that's more in a sort of hidden location, or in a more far back, so that people can keep cars there and then have some sort of emergency shelter somewhere. I think that's an idea. But yeah, when it comes to, I watched a video about building regulations and stuff. I know building regulations are important because there are certain standards that you must meet for a building to be safe. But when it comes to, Hurricane 4 building regulations, I feel like if you start saying that houses have to have this, otherwise they can't exist, by doing things like this, you're actually scaring people into not wanting to invest in properties, and this could be very, very damaging. If you've got some really nice houses mixed in with some other houses that are cheap and not very nice, you want to encourage everyone to make their house look good. And if you start saying you have to make your house built for these regulations, people are just going to start getting scared and being like, well, I'm not going to do anything. You say that I need to do it to these things. It costs way too much money to get to this. I think in these cases, I agree with both sides. I agree that you need to make houses a lot more strong and a lot more safe for hurricanes and stuff like this. The problem is twisters can destroy any house. It can be the strongest house in the world, and if you get a direct hit with a very strong twister, it's gone. And therefore, forcing people to have certain building regulations when it comes to hurricanes, it's definitely a good idea, because you need houses to be strong and safe, and to keep people safe, and to not be destroyed after a short time. But at the end of the day, they can be destroyed either way, even if it's the best built house. If you've just got the wrong location, or the wrong thing, the wrong twister that comes over you, all that work and all that money and all that effort could be for nothing. And therefore you have to be slightly loose with it, because otherwise people are just going to be like, well, I'm not going to build, I'm not going to do this. And if the location is going to be like it is going to be now, which is just completely wrecked, there's so many houses that are just going to be trash. People don't want to live in areas where half the buildings are just rubble. You don't want to live in that. You want to live in an area that looks nice. And if the building regulations are too strong and too strict, people are going to give up before they even start trying to fix it and make it look better. And that's going to be a problem, because people aren't going to want to make it look good, or get rid of the rubble if they don't see a point. You know, if you just have to accept that you can't afford to make it to building regulations, people are going to give up before they try, and you shouldn't do that. But at the same time, you need to make it important that you need to make them aware that building regulations to a certain standard are not done to please the government or not done to please the buyer only, but it's done actually for the benefit of the buyer who's going to be living in that house during these hurricane seasons. And if you don't follow the rules and regulations of what a house needs to be, you know, it might fall down, and it might not last more than a few years. And I think if you make it legal to not meet regulations, so long as, you know, different types of regulations, you should have different flood regulations. You know, how much flood can it handle before it, or how high does the water have to rise before the house gets flooded, and how strong. You can have like a rating on wind ratings. How much wind, how much miles an hour do you think this house can contain? Do you think it can cope with 100 miles an hour, 150 miles an hour, 180 miles an hour? And therefore, all the houses should have a rating on what is a believed wind cope, how strong it can cope with wind, how high can it cope with floods, how high can the water rise before it floods. It's hard to speak properly when I'm not, but yeah, you need to have some sort of someone who examines the buildings and makes this assessment. How much wind do you think it can cope with? How much, and you can tell this by how many hurricanes it's survived in the past. If it's survived 150 in the past, then it's likely that it's going to survive it again. But if it didn't, or if it's caused major damage, then you know that type of building does not survive in these kind of gusts. And so you need to give assessment on all these houses to see how much they cope with. And people shouldn't have to live to the high, strict standards. But if they don't, they need to recognise that there's a high chance that the house won't last another few more years. And if they sell the house, the buyer needs to be made aware of this. You know, I think it would be an unfair purchase for people to sell these houses to others, whilst with the belief that they're okay, you know, up to a higher standard than what they actually are. I think it's like selling things on auction. It doesn't matter if you sell something that's crap, but as long as the buyer is aware of what they're buying and aren't just being tricked into buying something. You know, I feel like this is the reason why these hurricanes are not being talked about in the UK media, because there's a lot of rich people in UK that probably have houses all over the world, and maybe people don't want to make it, or what people don't want to put it on the news, because they don't want people to not invest in these houses. Because if people were made aware of how of what could happen to these houses, you know, the value of them will decrease massively. And I think the people who own these houses don't want the value of their houses to drop massively. So I feel like this is the real reason why they're not being reported all over the news. But yeah, a smart person, I guess, who's interested in buying in these areas need to do their research about the areas. And if you are doing your research about these areas, you'll have an understanding of what kind of houses survive and what kind of houses don't. And yeah, I think Florida definitely are going to face some problems, because this isn't an isolated event. I think I mildly remember the Ian one, but I remember the name, but I didn't follow it. Haven't been following any hurricane in the last 10 years. I know when I went to Florida when I was 12, and I think I went 3 years in a row, 12, 13 and 14, you know, I really liked it, but yeah, that there was a kind of excitement. We always went during the hurricane season, and there was kind of an excitement, are we going to hit a hurricane? You know, even though I was only 12, I was aware that there was going to be a hurricane, or it was likely to be a hurricane. And when I hit, it was Hurricane Debbie. It was the first one that kind of made me aware of hurricanes. But I actually kind of went there because I wanted to try and control it. I was into witchcraft when I was 12, and I actually wanted to go there to see if I could try and pick up on one of these and try and like change its direction. So find out which way Hurricane Debbie was going, and then try and change it, and use the power of my mind to change the direction. And I swear it did actually work. And then I wanted a closer look, and I was like, right, I want her twister right to be in the field. I want to, at some point during my holiday, I want there to be a twister in the field next to me. And that did actually happen. And then there was a third one, that there was three. Only one was a hurricane, the other two were twisters, but and they didn't cause any damage. I don't think they even came to land properly. But I didn't like the place where I was staying in Miami, that was full of mosquitoes that were all mating, and I really wanted to get out there. And we were evacuated and we were allowed to leave because of Hurricane Debbie. But I feel like I kind of caused it, and then as soon as we were allowed to leave this horrible place because of all the horrible mosquitoes, I kind of used the power of my mind to change their direction, and it worked. And I don't know if it actually worked or if this was just a coincidence, but I was very glad that we got to leave, because my dad had paid for the whole week in this place, and I was just like, oh my gosh, I got bit like 200 times within like the 2 nights that we stayed there. So I was very glad to be able to get out of there and not have to stay any longer. But yeah, I know, I was very aware that Florida is full of hurricanes, and therefore it kind of makes me think, though, what kind of people would actually invest in expensive houses in Florida? That they must be getting hit every single year. And I feel like the reason why it's a very Christian state, is because Christians kind of believe that if they don't get hit, it's because of God. If their house was one of the lucky houses that doesn't get destroyed, thank God, God has saved me. And a lot of Christians might start thinking, if they've been saved once, they'll be saved twice. They'll be saved again. If it only floods by 3 meters, everything's fine. You can fix it. It won't be bad next time. And I feel like because their belief in God, but it's in a false God. It's in a belief in the false God that can, do everything and fix everything and is guiding their life. Because they have this strong belief in the false God. They also have this strong belief that a big hurricane is not going to hit and is not going to destroy their house, and they're not going to be one of the few that lose their house. And I think it's a very foolish belief to have, and therefore I feel like anyone who's investing in these houses in Florida, they must be aware that it might just fall, crash. And if you've got a £300 mortgage, $300 mortgage on one of these houses, who is giving you this mortgage? Who is allowing you to have this expensive house when there's a high chance that it's just going to crumble with a hurricane like this? I don't know, but I heard a rumor, because I was listening actually to what Anna was saying about how the government shouldn't have let these houses in wetland areas be formed, because I think the statistics was these wetland areas are very, very good at absorbing water. So if a flood happens, these areas can absorb water, which actually prevent more houses from not flooding. But if these houses are full of houses, and the wetland area has been taken away, it's just going to cause more flooding, because there's no area to absorb the water, and the water just spreads out over all the houses and cause more damage. And I think she was saying that the government shouldn't have allowed this, but they did allow it because they didn't care about the people that are going to put huge amounts of money into these areas only for their houses to be destroyed. On one hand, that they might have a point. Why were so many houses allowed to be built in areas that are going to face regular battery from storms like this? But on the other case, if people want to invest in this, if people want to build expensive houses with the high chance that a storm could destroy it, they need to take on some responsibility for bad decisions. Were they aware that this is not a good area to build? Were they aware that this sort of stuff is likely to happen, and they were just hoping that God will save them and God will not allow this and stuff? And I feel like it's a huge amount of ignorance that some people have. But On the other hand, I think if they're made in a certain way, they might be fine. You know, there were plenty of buildings that are going to be fine and are strong. But yeah, if 50% of the buildings have been damaged in a quite extreme way, then these areas are not going to be very nice. Even the houses that have survived, you know, it's not going to be a nice living area if you're walking around and there's chaos everywhere. So you on one hand you need to have low building regulations, because that will encourage people to just be like, you know, you don't have to go for the building regulations, just make it look nice, just make your area, your land space look nice and tidy, and you don't have to follow building regulations. You know, on one hand I get the need for you to say that, because you want to encourage people to make it look nice for all the people that live there, and all the people that are in strong buildings and are in strong housing that are sort of up to hurricane standard code and stuff. You know, you want the area to look nice, so you want the coding, you want the regulations to be low, so that people can feel like they have the freedom to make the decisions on what they want, and the budget that they want to spend. If you start making the regulations too high, then they're not going to be flexible with their budget choices. They're going to have to be like, well, we need to have proper concrete at the bottom, and we need to, you know, you need to make these very strong, and this is going to be way too expensive, and I can't afford this. And if you start doing that, then people are just going to be like, well, I can't afford it, and then they're just going to leave their land looking like a dump, and so you don't want that. So I think the best way to handle it is to say that there are going to be tighter building regulations, but the building regulations don't necessarily need to be followed. It's this is what it needs to be to, you know, to survive a storm. Now, if you don't want to make it up to this standard, you don't have to, but you have to realize that you are putting yourself at a high risk, and you should discourage investors from wanting to invest in houses that, you know, that might just get destroyed by the next year's flood, you know, or the next year's storm. And okay, it's more of a direct hit this year and I don't think it's come inland as much. Usually it just goes on the surface, on the outer rim and stuff. But yeah, I think if investors realise that this is a risk that they're taking, then you know, people are being stupid, and they're taking out bigger and bigger mortgages, and they're thinking, oh, I'll pay it off in 20 years. But if your house doesn't exist in 10 years time or 5 years time, you know, you're not going to be able to pay it off. Why? Because you're going to be looking for another mortgage to buy in a different area, and if the mortgage is attached to your name rather than the land, that means if you move to another land or another area or another code of the United States, you know, a lot of people are going to have to be moving more north, I guess. You know, does this mortgage that you had, does this follow you because of your name, or does it? I think it's mortgages usually are attached to the name rather than the land, and yeah, that's going to cause a lot of problems for people. And I think a lot of people have this sort of, I think it's the Christian teaching. The Christian teaching is that trust in God. God can do everything, and they'll be willing to take on bigger risks on the belief that God is going to help them and stuff. And it's just a stupid belief, because it's not how it is. And I think yeah, people are getting quite cocky with you know, wanting more now, wanting a nice big house now, and it's going to come at a shock, because really, I think to help people, you need to house them, and to house them, I guess you need to. I guess one of the ways would be to find buildings that have been hotels that have been destroyed by, you know, by the hurricane, and make some sort of offer where you get a free bedroom, a free hotel room, providing you help build, you know, the hotel. And if you can get like 100 people to just focus on a hotel, build it, finish off, pay for the room to look nice, just your room. If you get 100 people to just pay for one room to look good, on the deal that if they make that one room look nice, they'll have like a free accommodation for 6 months. If you do something like that, that might be a good way, because they get the free housing, the hotel gets to be renovated, and the people who made that room look nice, the whole group of people, the whole 200 people that made those hotel rooms, they get a place to stay. And as soon as they've finished with that hotel, they can then have somewhere to go back and finish, do their houses, make their houses look good, make the houses look better. I think I've heard of these pop-up houses, like you can buy them on Amazon. I think they're like £10,000, and the walls just open up. So I would definitely recommend selling these 10 meter by, I think they're like 6 meter by 10 meter or something. Try and make as many of these pop-up 6 meter by 10 meter houses. Then you can just take them to the courtyard or the gardens of these places, plonk them down, give them a small hut to live in. That's a place, somewhere to go whilst they fix their houses, somewhere that's just sheltered. A lot of these houses are going to be open, they're going to have windows missing and stuff, and if there's loads of windows that need to be made and loads of doors that need to be remade and stuff, there's it might take a while for the new windows and new doors to all be made. So set up pop-up, I don't even know what it's called. You get in a hotel in like Thailand, you can get like a small shed that looks like just like a nice bedroom, but it's like a kind of like small hut or something. Sell lots of these huts to just put place inside driveways of these houses that have got severe damage and might collapse. So and then if they live in this safe space, and then they can work on the house to make it look good. But yeah, I just I think people need to be realistic in what is worth saving. I think bungalows in these areas are probably not very safe. If they're double floored and they've just got a wall missing, then it might just be a case of just fixing the wall and making it livable again. But yeah, if this is going to happen every single year, then you need to invest in ways to make the ground floor waterproof, so that water can come in and out and it still be safe. And I think a proper evaluation on the buildings need to be assessed to work out if it's worth. You need to make it clear that if building regulations are going to be tighter, it's not because the government is being an asshole. It's because they are trying to help you into deciding whether or not it's worth putting another 30,000 into making the house livable again. If you put 30,000 into making a house livable from last year, and all that work has just come to nothing, and you have to start again, can you still live there knowing that you're just going to have to you might have to do this every year? I think people need to be smarter and wiser, and I think there are a lot of stupid people in these places who do just think, if nothing happened to my house this year, it's because God saved me, and because God saved me, it's going to happen every year, and that's not the truth. And I think a lot of people are going to realize it this year, and I think there might be a lot of people that think that if they can just convince a mortgage lender to lend them more money, that everything is going to be fine, when in reality that's not the truth, and that's not how it is. And mortgage lenders need to realize that these people might not be able to give them any mortgage back. If they've already taken 100,000 out to buy this place, and now the house is needs another 50,000 to renovate it. If you gave them 50,000 last year, and there's no point of keep doing it. And I think if people who can learn to do their own building work, do their own plastering, do their own removing of walls and putting back of walls, if once you've done it once, you know how to do it, then you might be more tempted to do it again. But yeah, if people feel like they're going to have to do it three times or again next year, then I don't know. There's going to be a lot of problems.